God for those kind words. What we Republicans all share is so much greater than what separates us, so I see that tonight. I want to emphasize some of those. Less government, more freedom, individual liberty. Those are the undying principles of our party. I'd like to take a moment to introduce myself because I figured out that there's some members of our party present who weren't born when I attended my first Republican convention. That's true. It was 22 years ago. There's one at this table. It's a little child. And the last time I was asked to speak was 2000, but I was the nominee for the United States Senate, so it's been a few years. But tonight I'm particularly happy to relate that I served in the administration of President Ronald Reagan. It was his first term. I worked for Fred Fielding, his White House counsel, then the Deputy Attorney General, then I was the director of his Bureau of Competition. I left President Reagan's administration in 1983. 6 years later, I was elected to Congress. It was a tremendous honor, and because the President is sworn in on January 20th, and Congress is sworn in on January 3rd. I actually get to say to my dying day that I started my time in Congress when Ronald Reagan was president.
Yeah.
Particularly appropriate tonight because we celebrate the 20th anniversary of the destruction of the Berlin Wall. I served 5 terms as a Republican member of Congress, and in my last term as Congressman, I had to vote on whether to impeach President Clinton for having testified falsely under oath in a federal criminal investigation. My district was strongly for President Clinton. I, however, did not hesitate to vote my conscience, and I voted to impeach him. One of the House impeachment managers, then Congressman, now Judge Jim Rogan, spoke to this Republican state convention in 2000. He told the convention that my decision to vote to impeach was the linchpin, because so many other moderate Republicans had been holding back. After my vote, Jim Rogan said they had the courage to vote their consciences as well. Jim Rogan paid with his own seat in Congress for having been one of those impeachment managers, although many in this room did their very best to try to help him when he was defeated in 2000. Jim Rogan is a hero. Here's what he said about me. Tom Campbell is one of the best public servants I've ever known. I'll always be proud to have been his colleague and to count myself as a friend. Before I entered Congress, I was a professor of law at Stanford, and I was asked to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee on the nomination of Robert Bork to the Supreme Court of the United States. I supported Judge Bork. Senator Kennedy, God rest his soul, expressed surprise that a Stanford law professor would testify in favor of Judge Bork. So many other Stanford professors had testified the other way. The next year, just as you might predict, when I ran for Congress, my Democratic opponent mailed out potholders to women voters, emblazoned with the caption, "Tom Campbell testified for Robert Bork." I still have one of those potholders. But I did suggest that if I sent out anything to women voters, it would have been calculators instead of potholders. The state senator and now Congressman Tom McClintock had this to say about my service as finance director of the state of California, 2004 to 5. Quote, "Mr. Campbell commanded absolute respect from all sides because he was clear, straightforward, and honest, at times painfully honest, in representing the financial condition of the state. If the state was deficit spending, he would say so. If a measure created a short-term savings and long-term expense, he would say so. He recognized that although he was appointed by the governor, he occupied an office of trust that owed a higher allegiance to the people of California. And because of that, he did an exemplary job, both of representing the governor and serving the people. Integrity is not something that can be proclaimed, it must be demonstrated. And respect cannot be demanded, it must be earned. That's the fine point of it. Tom Campbell knew that and lived it during his service as finance director. Tom Campbell was assiduous in rising above the political debates that are inherent in the budget process, knowing that his moral authority and credibility as state finance director would be completely undermined if he allowed himself to be used as a political pawn. He was an honest broker to all who consulted him, and as a result, he earned universal respect on both sides of the aisle, and to quote Tom McClintock. Now here's one of my favorites. After I left Congress, Ron Paul, Republican and Libertarian, Congressman and candidate for president, he kindly wrote me a letter in which he must tell you that I miss your presence here as a voice of reason. Unfortunately, the void left by the absence of one as knowledgeable about and committed to the Constitution as you is not easily filled, end quote. Ward Connolly and I worked together for Proposition 209. You all remember 209. It ended racial preferences by our state government. At this very state convention in 1996, I made the motion that the state party endorse Proposition 209, and we carried it from there to victory. Ward Connolly recently had this to say about me, quote, "There are few individuals in the public arena for whom I have greater admiration and respect than you. For as long as I live, I will remember the principled support that you gave me with respect to Proposition 209. While other Republicans and virtually all Democrats were afraid to stick their necks out in defense of a principle that goes to the heart of American citizenship, namely equal treatment for all, you were by my side from the outset, and your support never wavered. More than anyone else who formed my brain trust on this issue, you understood the history of civil rights in America and always articulated the fact that equal treatment for all was a defining characteristic of what it means to be an American." End quote, Ward Connolly. In 1992, 17 years ago, I ran for the United States Senate, and I lost the Republican primary, 38 to 36. Here's what Lou Cannon, Ronald Reagan's foremost biographer, had to say about that race 17 years ago. "Mr. Campbell nearly became a U.S. Senator. In 1992, he narrowly lost the Republican nomination for an open Senate seat. Speaking as someone who covered that campaign for the Washington Post, I believe that Mr. Campbell would have won the election had he been nominated." End quote. Well, as everyone in this room knows, Barbara Boxer won that election in November, and she's still in office 17 years later. I did my best. Ronald Reagan, Tom McClintock, Ron Paul, Ward Connolly, Jim Rogan, Robert Bork have all stated that I stood with them on behalf of the principles that we share: less government, more freedom, individual liberty. This year we're called upon once again to help our state and our country by re-energizing those core Republican principles. And nowhere is the need greater than in the area of fiscal responsibility. We've failed to balance our state budget once again. The patience of the people is running out with all in government service. And while their dissatisfaction might find its outlet a little bit more with the Democrats who run the legislature than with us Republicans in the minority, an honest self-assessment compels us to admit we could have done better. In fact, we actually have done better. When I was finance director, we balanced the state budget without increasing taxes, without increasing borrowing, and without any gimmicks of an accounting or magical nation. Woo!